More breaking transfer portal news in college football. Oklahoma quarterback Jackson Arnold is entering the portal. That's the latest from our Matt Zenitz. The former five-star quarterback appeared in 10 games this season for Oklahoma, but he was benched at different points throughout the season. In 2 seasons there in Norman, he threw 16 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He still has 2 years of eligibility left wherever he ends up. Let's get into it. We've got Danny Kanell here in studio. We have Chris Hummer, who covers the transfer portal for 24/7 Sports. Chris, Oklahoma has a new offensive coordinator. Is this news expected?
I think it was considered likely. Jackson Arnold's somebody that for really like 2.5, 3 months now, I think everybody's had on portal watch. And with Oklahoma making a change at the top, I think there was the thought that Ben Arbuckle, their new offensive coordinator, was going to want to bring their guy, his own guy in. And Jackson Arnold could find a fresh start elsewhere. I mean, he was almost basically running the option in the last 2 weeks for Oklahoma to make that offense go. So I think both sides would benefit from maybe a fresh start. And I would note that Jackson Arnold committed to Jeff Lebby back in the day, and Jeff Lebby might end up needing a quarterback at Mississippi State. So I think that connection can make a lot of sense.
It's a great call, Chris. I totally agree with that. I think that could be a good landing spot for him. Jeff Lebby probably will be in the market there. I think it's interesting, though, like when you get benched, you get bitter as a quarterback. Like it's just human nature. Like you don't feel like your head coach backed you. I think that was probably some of the reason, because I think Seth Rittrell wanted to play Michael Hawkins Jr., and maybe that's why they tried to salvage the relationship with Jackson Arnold by firing him mid-season. It was a disaster, and sometimes it just, if you're a quarterback, you want a fresh start, you want new scenery. They're bringing in a new guy who might bring in John Mateer, his former quarterback at Washington State. You start hearing some of these rumblings. So you say, you know what? I'm going to get out of here, start fresh. And I will say, he did bounce back after getting benched, helped them beat Alabama, was running the ball a lot. He's a very athletic quarterback who did mature and stop some of the turnovers on the latter portion of the season. Highly recruited prospect out of high school. So there will be a pretty strong market for Jackson Arnold.
And maybe the writing on the wall for John Mateer coming in as well. This is just speculation at this point. There's no report that Mateer is going there. But Danny, how do you think he would look in an Oklahoma uniform after all those touchdowns with Wazoo?
He's been phenomenal, and the familiarity with the system. I think that's the one thing we overlook all the time when we just think, oh, guy's going to plug into that system, he's going to learn it, it's going to work right away. We've seen examples, yes, where guys have gone and played well, but even Dylan Gabriel started slow this year at Oregon before really getting comfortable in that system. But when you pair up with your former offensive coordinator, if this does indeed happen, you're familiar with the terminology, the reads, the offense itself, the checks. You're just going to be more comfortable, and then it helps you become an extension of the coordinator on the field. So if it does make sense and it does happen, John Mateer is a quarterback I've had my eye on all season long for Washington State. He's been phenomenal, good with the football. You know, you throw in the touchdown passes with the rushing capability. He's dynamic. I think he would surprise a lot of people next year playing at the Power 4 level and would be a really good fit at Oklahoma if it does indeed happen.
Fluid situation right now. Our transfer portal rankings are changing by the second, and our rankings at quarterback did not change at the top with this news that Jackson Arnold is in the portal, because, Chris, he's still behind Connor Wegman, who is leaving Texas A&M with 2 years of eligibility left. Where could he be looking?
Yeah, Connor Wegman's an interesting player. I don't think he started more than 4 games consecutively at A&M due to a combination of injuries and, frankly, being benched for Marcel Reed at times this season. But if you just go back to, like, maybe the Miami game last year, you saw why 24/7 Sports ranked him a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He has all the tools you could possibly want. I think landing spots are still kind of uncertain with Connor Wegman at this point. He has not officially entered the portal yet, unlike a couple of the guys we're going to talk about. But there are quite a few needy quarterback teams out there in the FBS. A school like Oklahoma State closer to home could make some sense. Auburn could make some sense. Maybe Miami, which needs a quarterback, takes a peek there. But there are a lot of schools that need an upgrade at that position, and Connor's going to be a popular guy.
He, to me, is that potential play, Chris, somebody who has been rated really high coming out of high school. He's shown flashes of brilliance, and whether he's been, hurt, as you mentioned, or his play has been up and down, somebody feels like that's a reclamation project they can make the most of, and they can squeeze every ounce of it. I just haven't seen any consistent play from him. That would concern me, but I guarantee you there will be a market for him because, when he's in spring practice, practice. When he's in practice, lights it up clearly, has shown a lot of brilliance. Even at SEC Media Days this offseason, a lot of people said he could be the best quarterback in the SEC. Fell well short of that, gets benched, but there's always that P word, the potential word, that'll surround Connor Wegman, so I do think there'll be a market for him.
All right, moving down in our rankings to Miller Moss of USC, who is also going to enter the transfer portal. Chris, he only has 1 year of eligibility left. Where is he looking right now?
Well, our Missouri side at 24/7 reported that Missouri is a strong candidate for Miller Moss. I can corroborate that through a couple sources. I think Missouri is looking hard at a transfer portal quarterback, and Miller Moss is an option for them and replacing Brady Cook. I would also point to a school like Louisville, which needs a quarterback, and I know has some interest in Moss, and I think Michigan is also a team of note with Moss since he's been in the portal. He is somebody that I know maybe had a disappointing finish to his USC career, but he is one of the most intelligent quarterbacks you're ever going to come across in terms of just understanding of an offense, and he is somebody who can step in the door day one, learn your system, and run your system however you want it to go. And I think that's a really appealing thing for schools, especially schools looking for a bridge quarterback.
See, I think that's a perfect example for what you're describing is Michigan, right? They get Bryce Underwood, who is this hugely talented quarterback who's coming in, but he's just a freshman. And now that we're using that term bridge quarterback, it is like the NFL. When you've got a veteran quarterback to kind of help your rookie quarterback, that would be a very similar situation that Miller Moss could provide for Michigan as Bryce Underwood gets acclimated to the college scene. If he's lights it up and he's good to go, then you've got Miller Moss there in case of injury. But if he's not, you've got a placeholder there that can go that 1 year, and he'd also be a great person to soak, all that information up like a sponge if you're Bryce Underwood watching him play, and he gives you stability. I think there's a really high floor of what he brings to you. I was really impressed with what I saw of Miller Moss for most of the season. Got in trouble a couple times trying to do too much. That defense struggled at USC. The offensive line did as well. But if you put him on a team with some good surroundings, he can absolutely win you some games.
All right, another quarterback that has a name because he was great last season and led his team to a big bowl game is Caden Salter at Liberty. 13-1 last season. The numbers were big. This season, the team takes a step back. He takes a big step back. What kind of programs would be interested in Caden Salter, who is going to enter the portal as well, Chris?
Yeah, I think one thing people forget about Caden is he was a top 100 recruit himself coming out of high school. He went to Cedar Hill High School in Texas, and everybody wanted him. He enrolled at Tennessee. So this is a guy with a pretty high level of talent himself, and I think two schools you need to watch with him are Auburn and Michigan. The Auburn connection is obvious. Caden Salter played for Hugh Freeze at Liberty. Hugh Freeze brought him to Liberty initially. I think and Auburn needs a quarterback. Like, the dots are pretty easy to connect there. I also think Michigan has interest in Caden Salter. I think that's somebody that they will definitely kick the tires on again as they look for a bridge quarterback to Bryce Underwood. So those are two schools, at least early on, that I think make a lot of sense with Caden.
I think the Hugh Freeze connection makes probably the most sense of where you could go somewhere, familiarity with the system like we talked about earlier. Caden Salter is a dynamic athlete that plays quarterback. He's a good thrower, so I think he could be a perfect fit. We've already seen it with Hugh Freeze and what he can do in that system.
And we've seen some of these group of 5 quarterbacks that transfer, like Rourke out of Ohio to Indiana. Those guys can make a bigger impact than, the big-time schools, the blue-chip guys that transfer as well. A lot of things happening in the transfer portal as quarterbacks announce their intentions to enter the portal in just a few days. For much more on this, obviously head over to 24/7 Sports, subscribe on that YouTube channel. They've been live all throughout the day with signing day coverage here as college football has all kinds of stuff going on right now. Signing day, transfer portal, college football playoff, it's all happening.